Let's talk about local and global variables in Python. So I have a variable here called message, which points to the string hello world. I also have a function called cmessage, which prints out message. When I call cmessage, we see hello world printed out. This message variable is a global variable. It is defined at the global scope. What I mean by that is that it's defined outside of any function. It's defined at the module level. Python also has local variables. Local variables are defined inside of a function, and they only exist inside that function. So arguments to a function are an example of local variables. You can read from global variables as we did here in our cmessage function. Can you write to global variables? So we're going to take a function setMessage that accepts a name, and we're going to take that name in this setMessage function and assign the message function to hello and that name, and then we're going to print out message. So when I call setMessage with Trey, it prints out hello Trey. What do you think message is at this point? What's your guess? Is it hello world or is it hello Trey? So it turns out that the global variable message is still hello world. The reason for that is when you assign to a variable inside a function, you are assigning to a local variable. So you can read from a global variable and you can read from a local variable, but when you write to a variable, you're writing to a local variable inside a function. And if you have two variables of the same name, a global variable called message, for example, and a local variable called message, it's the local variable that wins when you read from that variable. That's not usually considered a good idea. That's called shadowing a global variable, but it is possible to do in Python. There's one more thing I should note. When you have two variables of the same name, a global variable and a local variable, inside your function, that variable name is always going to be either global or local. It cannot be both global and local inside the same function. So I'll show you what I mean by that. The setMessage function I've modified here to print out message before we assign to message, and then we print out message again. So when I call setMessage this time, you might assume that it's going to print out the global message variable hello world, and then assign to the local message variable, and then print out hello Trey, which would be the local message variable. Python doesn't actually do that though. Instead, it gives us an error. It says local variable message referenced before assignment. And it's giving us that error on the first line of code in this function. Python actually parsed this function after we defined it and looked at all the assignment statements and said all of those assignment statements assign to local variables, which means message, the message variable name, is a local variable inside this function. It cannot be treated as a global variable. It's local for the entirety of the function, even before we've defined it. So in Python, you can read from global variables, and you can read or write to and from local variables. But inside a function, every variable is either local or global within the same function, which is a good idea because it would be really confusing if a variable can switch from being in the global scope and then in the local scope inside the same function. The biggest takeaway, though, is that when you write to a variable, you are writing to a local variable inside a function. So that's local and global variables in Python.